What's going on, everybody? It's your favorite uncle back again, and boy, I'm pretty pissed off this time because a certain one of my boys is under attack, Mr. Joseph Rogan. For those of you who don't know, Joe hosts one of the biggest podcasts in the world, right? He recently moved out of California. He got tired of their bullshit. He's in the great state of Texas, doing well for himself. Just bought himself a $14 million mansion. But the reason he was able to move out of there and buy that mansion is because he just signed a $100 million deal with Spotify to bring his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, over to Spotify, and it's going to be exclusively on Spotify. Well, Joe has some controversial people on his podcast because he likes to have a conversation with everyone, the way everything should be. And the big thing is that some people say they give these people a platform to go on and spew their garbage, per se. But it's up to the people to decide if they believe in what these people are saying. And when Joe officially moved over, they moved all of his podcasts over to Spotify, but a few of the controversial podcasts didn't show up on Spotify, right? And Alex Jones' ones didn't show up, and Alex Jones' podcast was one of the best ones ever. It was super funny. Alex is just an animated guy. Him and Joe have been friends for a while. Well, that one didn't make it over, and Alex himself came out and said there's no censorship going on. I'm going to be coming on the podcast again. Just some of the files got corrupted. So they kind of made things a little bit believable. But recently, some employees at Spotify have gotten their draws all in a knot because they want full control over the podcast to edit things. Okay? Which, that's total fucking bullshit. Alright? Because the whole thing that makes the whole JRE podcast awesome is the fact that it's not edited. No one fucks with it. It's two people sitting down having a conversation. Whether you agree with that or not, that's what makes it great. No grimy fingers are in there twisting any type of thing. And I think what has brought this controversy to a new level is that recently Joe said in one of his podcasts that some leftists were starting fires, which he wasn't 100% off on that because they did arrest a leftist person for starting fires, but Joe issued an apology, and then once he issued that apology, everybody started attacking him. Ever since he got that Spotify money, he is in the spotlight now, and everyone wants a piece of that clickbait. Put Joe Rogan in your article, boom, it'll blow up, get all the clickbait. It's really fucking sad because Joe shouldn't have even apologized because what he said was actually true, but his apology was actually more wrong than what he actually said on the podcast. Since that happened, there's been a lot of internal strife within Spotify. There was a podcast with Abigail Shriver, I think I'm saying her last name right, and I listened to this podcast, and it was a very good podcast because it was about young girls who wanted to become trans, who wanted to transition at a very young age. Now, I'm talking about like 12, 13, 14. These girls are extremely young, and they want to get the reversal surgery to where they can't have kids again. So if they change their mind later on to have kids, they can't. The whole thing was there was no discourse, there was no discussion. If a 12 or 13-year-old wanted to do it, or even if, a 14-year-old, the parents didn't have any communication with it, and they could go ahead and they could do it. This set off a chain of events to where the co-workers at Spotify got mad. They were saying that Joe's anti-trans, but it's almost as if they didn't even listen to the podcast because he's not anti-trans, right? He has had trans people on the podcast before, and he has never spread any hate about that, but that doesn't matter to the Spotify people. They want complete control over JRE. But I gotta give it to the CEO of Spotify. He has stood his ground on this. He has little toleration for the strikes, because the people that are up in arms about the podcast and want to edit it, they want to go on strike. They're like, oh, we're gonna strike in our New York office. And Dan's not having it because he had a lot of meetings with a lot of these employees to talk about things, and he's like, yeah, we're not changing it, we're not editing it, it's staying like this. And this is what needs to happen. It's Joe's podcast, right? It does not need to be edited just because you're coming over to Spotify. It needs to stay exactly the way it is. And for those Spotify employees who want to strike, good. Go ahead and strike. Get your ass fired. Because Spotify needs some people in there who ain't gonna pull this type of stupid bullshit. For those who don't know, Spotify jobs, they pay around $100K, right? These are some very nice jobs. They have very good benefits. Spotify actually takes care of a lot of its people. So Spotify is from Sweden, I believe. If I get that wrong, let me know. I'm pretty sure they're from Sweden. They do the tech stuff there, and they do all the media stuff in New York. And it's the New York office that's up in arms right now. So, listen, Spotify employees, leave fucking JRE alone and just do your job, all right? Just do your job, because you have a very good job. This is some good advice from Uncle Bucas. You want to know a bigger conspiracy theory that I have about this? There's been some rumors, right, that Donald Trump may appear on the JRE podcast. I believe, I read this from a 4chan post, so take it with a micro grain of salt, that Trump was already scheduled to go on the JRE podcast even before the whole Joe Rogan would moderate between Biden and Trump thing came about, right? Trump was already scheduled to go on there. And I think what's happening is the Spotify employees want full control over the podcast, so that way they could chop up the podcast with Trump and like neuter it to where it would fit their agenda. I know that is a fucking conspiracy theory out of the ass, but it kind of makes sense. Even with the Spotify employees striking and saying they want full control, it's because Joe doesn't fit their narrative and he isn't 100% fully on their team. Joe wants to have conversations with everybody so that you can get a full clear picture. It's 2 to 3 hours of just talking about cool stuff, sort of like what we do here. Uncle Bucas finds a topic, it pisses him off, he talks about it, and you respond in the comments. That's exactly how it should go. A discussion between people about ideas. That's exactly what makes this country great, all right? America great. And I got news for you, Spotify. If you fuck with the JRE, I'm out. I just switched to it because Google Play Music is being shut down. Fuck you, Google, because Google Play Music was awesome. They're moving over to YouTube Music. YouTube Music is pretty much garbage. So I jumped on the Spotify, and so far, I am liking it. But you fuck with JRE, I'm out. Dan, you've been doing a great job as the CEO of Spotify. You've been doing a great job sticking to your guns because, you know, Rogan's your main man. That's going to pull a lot of people on the Spotify, and that's going to spur growth. And they've invested $100 million in this man. It's the biggest podcast in the world. And Joe is paving road right now, okay? He's gone where no one's gone before. When you chop down trees and bushes to pave roads where no one's gone before, you're going to hit potholes, you're going to have issues, and I applaud Joe for doing this, because that's exactly what we need. Presidential debates on stage with commercials, and you got 30 seconds to respond to something super controversial and something super depth that needs to go in depth. No. A podcast would be the absolute perfect place for all presidential candidates, because Bernie and Tulsi and Yang have gone on JRE before, and their podcasts were great. You got a full idea of how they are, and they got to dive in depth for all of their topics. And that's exactly how it needs to be. So Spotify employees, go ahead, go on strike, lose your fucking job. We'll get good people in there who aren't idiots and who get mad anytime their fifis are hurt or anytime someone just talks to someone who you don't exactly agree with. Because that's what makes this country great. Okay, two people can sit down and have a conversation, and they may not agree, but they can still have a conversation. In other countries, if you don't agree, you get a fucking bullet in your head, or you go to the gulag. So that is where we stand. This is America. Keep it free. Uncle Bucas is out. Peace.